Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts. In today's video, I'm making this hexagonal Easter treat box. This is approximately 2¼ inches across and it's 3 inches tall. It's not a difficult box to put together, but it is one of 2 treat boxes that I'm going to be making. So if you would prefer something with a slightly different construction or indeed a smaller box, in the next video, I'm going to be making this rectangular version, which is 2 inches across, 4 inches high, and it's 1 inch deep. So they're the two side by side. You can decide which one you'd prefer, or indeed you might want to make both. But today we're going to be making this version, so let's get started. I'm starting with a piece of cardstock, which is 9½ inches by 8 inches. And along the long side, score at 2¾ inch, 5 inches, and 8 inches. Rotate to the short side and score at 1¼ 2½, 3¾ 5, 6¼ and 7½. Then you want to fold over the top score line. So this ½ inch tab is on the right, fold over along the first score line and just burnish that. Then we're going to place that piece back in the scoreboard and take a pencil, and we're going to make a pencil mark at 3/8 inch, 7/8 inch, 1 5/8 inch, 2 1/8 inch. Then we're going to move along and mark at 4 1/8 inch, 4 5/8 inch, 5 3/8 inch, and 5 7/8 inch. So you'll have 2 sections here that have got pencil marks in, 1 that doesn't, 2 here that have pencil marks in, and then the end section doesn't. Remove that piece from your scoreboard, and we're going to fold and burnish along all of the score lines. The next thing I've done is made my rabbit ear template. Now there are lots of resources via Pinterest. If you're not very confident, you might have an oval die that you want to adapt. I've just freehand drawn mine. So I've cut a scrap of cardstock, which was 1¼ inches times 2 3/4 inch. Along the top edge, I've marked at 5/8 inch just to give me my halfway point. And then on the other end, I've made a pencil mark at 3/8 inch and 7/8 inch. So this narrow part at the top is going to be the same width as the pencil marks that we've put on the top edge of the box. I've then just used those as a guide and freehand drawn my rabbit ear shape. So what I'm going to do is cut around that, and I'm going to use that as a template for my ears on the top of the box. So the first thing I'm going to do is, now I've got my ear template, is I'm going to draw around that in the 4 sections, lining the base of the template up with the pencil marks which are on the score line. So that's my rabbit ears. Now what we're going to do is, I'll just give you some indication. We're going to be cutting from the end of the rabbit ear diagonally down to the corner of the second section down. So we'll be cutting along these lines like so. So this is how our piece is going to be shaped. We'll then be removing this section and this section, so we'll be cutting along here, and we'll then be cutting along like so, and then again we'll be cutting along here like so. So that's the template of what we're going to cut. The first thing I'm going to do is create the base sections. You won't have this score line, but I'm going to cut along all of these to create the base tabs. And then when I get to the end, I'm going to completely remove this end rectangle like so. Rotate and just take a wedge from the end of that glue tab, and then I can move along to the next score line and just shape that glue tab like so. So that's the base element of the box, and now I'm going to remove the sections that have got a cross in them, and I'm going to cut around the ears and cut away the angles from this second section down. So I'm just going to completely remove this section on this end to start with, make life a little bit easier for myself. You might want to do this with a craft knife, might find it easier to do it that way. So you could just go in with a craft knife and a ruler. That's what I'm going to do, like so, and then I can just go along and remove that section with my craft knife. I can obviously go in and rub all the pencil lines out because I only drew those in roughly just to give you an indicator. So that's that central section cut, and now I'm going to continue and cut round the ears at the top, and then I will remove any of the pencil marks that have been left behind. So this is the box cut out. I'm going to add my pattern paper on whilst the pieces are flat. So I have 6 pieces which are 1 inch by 2 3/4 inch, so that's for these sections here. And then for these sections I've cut a piece which is 1 inch by 2 inches, and I'm just going to lay the piece on the section so I know that's the right length, and I'm just going to mark with a pencil where I want that angle to come in. I'm going to cut that one down and then adjust as necessary, and then I'll use this one as a template for the remaining 3 sections. Quite happy with the look of that on there, so I'm going to use this one as a template for the other pieces. Now that element has got the pattern paper on, I'm going to fold over the 2 ends. You could at this stage, if you wanted, realign your rabbit's ears if you feel that they're vastly out of shape for one another. I'm not too concerned about that, to be honest. And then I'm going to fold over this end and secure the side of the box. So we're now going to glue the base. I'm going to move these sections back because it just makes life easier. So I can sit the piece down like so, move these sections back, and we're going to be adding opposite tabs to one another. So this one is going to secure onto the one opposite. Then we can glue down this one, and that's going to glue to the one opposite. Get those lined up and you should get a nice shape. And then we can add glue onto this one like so. And then this one is going to be the last one that goes down. And if you work on opposites and get those as lined up as you can, you should end up with a nice hexagonal shape to the box. So then we can flip that over, and I'm just going to go down onto the inside of my score tool and just spread that glue around. I'm going to bring up these 2 ears and just cross those over, bring up the next 2 at the back and just cross those over, and then I'm just going to bring those together and tie a bow around this section. There is our rabbit ear gift box, and now we just need to decorate the rest of the box and add some embellishments. So here I've just added some simple ephemera which was in an Easter paper pack I've had for a couple of years, and I've added this piece here onto a frog type mechanism so that it can actually sit on the angle. I'm sure you will have seen these before, but if you just take a strip of card, if you bend it into this type of shape, so this is the element which would stick on the back of the image, and then you can add glue onto these 2 small legs here, and then that will allow you to adhere your piece over an angle like so. And then obviously just the simple ribbon bow. So there we have our project for today. It's a good size for some Easter treats, and it comes together relatively quickly. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel, and until next time, thanks for watching.